There has to be more to work than just a paycheck. My name is Clément Frisoni, and I am passionate about how companies manage their human capital. This is Cambodia Workwise. Each episode, I will bring you insights from the Cambodian world of work with CEOs, HR managers, human capital deciders, and people who think there is more to work than just the 9-to-5 traditional work. In this show, we will talk about HR, recruitment, and the broader Cambodian world of work. This is Cambodia Workwise. Welcome to another episode of Cambodia Workwise. Today's discussion is all about cross-cultural communication. My guest is Brett White. He is a senior trainer in leadership and cross-cultural communication. Together, we discuss the importance that cross-cultural differences have in corporate life. And we also address the space that foreigners take in Cambodia. And how can we, as Westerners, adjust our behaviors and our mindset for successful integration into Cambodian culture. Enjoy our discussion. Being here with me today. I'm super excited to have you because you're not here all the time in Phnom Penh. So you're actually from Australia and you live between Sydney and Phnom Penh, right?
That's true.
So you are a leader consultant at beleaders.com.
Yep.
And I wanted to have you here today on the show, not only to talk about leadership, which I think we will end up talking about, but also I wanted to tackle the broad topic of intercultural relationships.
Yeah.
And when you work here, when you work in Cambodia, there are so many ways Westerners interact with Cambodians and vice versa. It can be a great opportunity for learning, for developing yourselves, broadening your mind. We all have so much to learn from the other culture. But sometimes it can get a bit tricky. Sometimes there are cultural barriers, language barriers, and I wanted to untangle all that with you today. So maybe for those of us who don't know you so well, could you help us understand who you are and what is it you do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So yeah, I've been traveling to Cambodia since 2009, so 15 years now. For the last number of years, I've been working and volunteering across a wide range of organisations in Cambodia, focusing specifically probably on two things. One, on leadership and culture. And then I think I have a side passion, which is football, soccer, and I've been quite involved in working with some organisations here that use football as a way of building community, particularly with impoverished young people here in Cambodia. But leadership obviously is my passion, and developing leaders is really my focus because I believe that an organisation or a team is only really as good as the leader, and so helping leaders become the best that they can be.
In the way people behave at work, behave towards their career development,
yeah.
I'm sure you've seen how things have evolved.
Yes.
Could you share a bit about that?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of change in that 15 years and probably some things that haven't changed that I feel need to continue to improve. And this connects probably to some of the other conversations that we'll have around different cultures and how that interplays. There's definitely has been a big growth in education. And so even in the leadership space, when I first started to run leadership development and training, there wasn't a lot on offer here in Cambodia. Now there's quite a lot on offer. And one of the things that I love over the last 3 or 4 years is the rise of local Cambodians in positions of leadership training, public speaking, motivational speakers, executive coaching. It's, for me, really, that's been a really big growth area, particularly in the last 5 years, is seeing local leaders step up to not just lead, but to train, to equip, to be prominent in the space of leadership coaching, leadership development, leadership training. And I've met some phenomenal local facilitators, trainers, and kind of life executive coaches that are working in that space now. And that really excites me. I think organizations generally want to be the best that they can be, obviously, but that from a leadership perspective, there's a lot more investment, particularly in the bigger organizations when they probably have the capacity to invest into their leadership development. And a lot of the kind of global companies that are now operating in Cambodia, whether that be insurance companies or banks, and I've done quite a bit of work in those two spaces, in really investing in time, energy, and finances to build and grow their next kind of level of leaders. And again, 15 years ago, that didn't exist.
Big organizations have more room for investing into creating those leaders. But is there a trend in Cambodia where individuals, whether they are employed in a big company or not, whether it's sponsored by their company or not, want to invest in their leadership?
Yeah.
What motivates an individual to invest on his own in his leadership development?
I think there's probably a few things. I mean, I think obviously there's career advancement. So there's the greater opportunities, greater earning capacity, obviously, and that's probably becoming more and more a motivator, I find, in the leadership space here in Cambodia. But also I think people are seeing and realizing that if they want to get the best out of life, or if, say for some people they're starting their own business or they're entrepreneurial, they're doing a startup, they realize that leadership is key to them being successful. And so if they want to be successful, not just in business or in their role, but also in life, developing themselves as a leader is critical to that journey. And I think a lot of them are seeing that and realizing that, you know, they'll come to a training or they're listening to podcasts, they're reading books, they are trying to invest as much as they can into that personal development. So not just leadership development, but personal development. And I kind of link the two anyway, because I believe that at the very core of being a great leader is being a great relationship person, because leadership is about the relationships you have. And so the better your relationships, the more effective you become as a leader. And so learning how to do relationships at a better level, you've got to understand more about yourself and have an awareness around, you know, what are my blind spots? What can't I see? What are some of my behaviors that might impact my leadership in a negative way? Where do I need to grow? What's my growth areas? What are my strengths? So the more you can understand about yourself as a leader and a person, the better that you can grow and have a increased impact on people around you. So I think they would be some of the key reasons. That obviously the promotion, advancement, opportunity. I think the more people invest in their leadership development, the more opportunity that they will get to advance their career or to move up the corporate ladder, if you like, or you know, or just be successful in their own business.
In your eyes, what are common gaps that Westerners and Cambodians face when they are trying to work with each other? Are there hurdles that are happening over and over again that you have seen in the past 15 years?
I think one of the significant differences in Cambodia is their history, and how their history connects into how the Westerner role has played out in Cambodia that might be different to how that would work in other cultures. So as a developing country with a pretty horrific past, you know, and not that long ago, has had massive impacts, I believe, on culture. Part of that is around mindset. So the local mindset of the way they view a Westerner or a foreigner, very much putting a Westerner up here, you know, high
for
and
those
mighty.
who are not viewing the video,
Yeah,
up here,
so
you mean
up high.
Up high, okay.
And putting them and themselves down very low. And I think that mindset in Cambodia has also added to the complexity of working in a leadership or business or work environment cross-culturally. A great book that I'll recommend people read, it's called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer, and I've used a lot of her research, and she's researched basically all countries around the world and looked at the key kind of differences, between cultures and how that can impact outcomes and relationships and effectiveness. But there's a few that I believe are significant, say, for generally Western culture, and in particular, probably Australian, UK, American coming to Australia. A little bit different in some of the European countries, but say, for example, in areas of hierarchy. So Australian culture in the business world, it's much more flat. It's much more even, whereas still in Cambodia, particularly in corporate space, it's very hierarchically driven. And so that then impacts things like decision making. And, it would be considered in some organizations, you can't talk to the CEO or, the managing director. You have to talk to your inline manager. You can't. And so that can feel frustrating. And as a Australian, we don't have that same, I could go and approach the CEO, even though there's maybe 3 levels of leadership between me and him, that would be considered okay. It wouldn't be considered the wrong thing to do. Whereas in a hierarchical structure, it's very much about position and power and authority. If I don't understand that as a foreigner, I can create problems in the workplace because of the way I'm communicating outside of those lines of hierarchy. And it's not about one is better or worse or one is right or wrong. It's just that they're different. And the key for us as foreigners is actually understanding those differences. So we're here in Cambodia. And so we want to go with their way of doing, their way of being, and learn from that, whilst at the same time, if there's ways of being and doing and that we can help them with, yes, we want to do that as well. Scheduling is probably another one. I found out pretty early on that, I'll meet you at 10 o'clock doesn't always mean 10 o'clock. Again, I think that filters down into other things as well. So, for example, changing a meeting at the last minute, generally in Khmer culture is not such a big deal because they're very loose with scheduling. They're a lot more free. They're not as tied down to, this super serious structure. Whereas in Australian culture, that would be like, you can't change a meeting at the last minute. That would upset people.
That would upset me.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm the same. So I come from that very organised, structured, this is how it needs to be. Yeah. And I found in Cambodia, there's a lot more adaptability. They're a lot more flexible around scheduling and timing and things like that, which I actually find quite just like a breath of fresh air. It's quite nice in so many ways, but it can also be frustrating to that person that's very scheduled. So as a foreigner coming in and working in this kind of culture, you've got to learn to relax a little bit, let go of your scheduling and sort of go with the flow a bit more. That doesn't mean that, if you're leading a team and, you want to have a meeting at 10 o'clock and people are turning up late, that you go, well, yeah, that's just the culture. That doesn't mean you can't speak into that as a leader. Doesn't mean you necessarily, you accept lower commitment. But I just think foreigners need to learn to be a little bit more relaxed and flexible and adaptable. Feedback would be another one. I work with an organisation here, quite a big electrical organisation that's run by some French guys. When they're giving feedback, it's very direct. Yeah. It's very, I'm just going to tell you what you're doing wrong. Yeah. And can feel very abrupt, very almost abrasive. Yeah. But it's not. It's just their way. Right? They just want to tell you what's wrong as quickly as possible. Whereas Cambodian culture is a lot more soft. For example, you could never criticize your leader in a meeting with other people here in Cambodia. That would be disrespectful. Right. Whereas in Australia and in France, that's okay. Yeah, do that all the time.
Yeah. It's okay. It's cultural. It's normal. We have to do it.
That's right.
In France, if you don't criticize something or someone, it means you are not able to see
what's wrong,
or what could be better, what could be done differently.
So helping local people realise that when a foreigner is direct, it's not personal, but they would take it personally. They get highly offended if they were criticised like in that specific way, helping them to realise it's actually not personal. It's just their way. But also then helping foreigners learn better ways to communicate critical feedback.
Let's say I have a Khmer boss and I want to give them feedback about something they've done. How can I make it happen while being culturally respectful and also making my business agenda go forward, you know?
It's a great question because generally people struggle with negative feedback. None of us particularly love it. There are a few people that I've met that thrive on it, but we have this kind of love-hate relationship with negative feedback. We kind of want it because we know it's helpful to us growing and developing and getting better, but we also want people to think we're amazing as we are. I think just developing some really clear ways of doing feedback, particularly if it's upward feedback. So me giving my boss or supervisor or manager feedback is a lot more challenging in a Khmer culture than it would be, say, in an Australian culture or probably in a French culture. Because of the hierarchy or the respect, I mean, even some of the language that gets used, you know, the word subordinate, for example. I remember when I first heard that word here in Cambodia, I was like, you can't call someone your subordinate, but it's part of their culture. You know, if I use that word in Australia, I'd probably get arrested or sued or something. The things that I would be thinking through, one would be the first thing you want to communicate is your intention. We know our intention, but we very rarely communicate it. So if I'm giving you some critical feedback and you're my boss, I want you to understand my intention. It's not because I don't like you. I want you to be better. I want you to be able to be more successful. I value you as a leader. I want to see you grow and be the best that you can be. So my intention, my why is it important for me to give you this feedback? And I think if you have to start there, because if you start there, often what happens is those kind of defensive walls come down a little bit. People are a lot more open if they know that you're kind of for them and you're on their side. And even if you're giving feedback to people on your team, I would do the same thing. And then I would say be specific. A lot of the challenges I found in Cambodian culture in critical feedback is it's often very vague. Now, that's partly a communication style. Again, one of the big significant differences often between cultures is the way we communicate. You know, for Australian culture, we are very kind of exact and precise and you know. Cambodia's a little bit more nuanced. It's a little bit more, you know, what's not being said, some of the words under the surface, if you like. And so just being specific, so saying, you know, what you did yesterday wasn't very good, it's not helpful, right? Why? What specifically did I do that wasn't good and what specifically could I do to improve? And then talking about what I would call the impacts. This is what you did and this is how it impacted me or the team. And then some kind of follow-up. So an appreciation. Thanks for allowing me to give you the feedback. Is there anything you need from me? So I just teach that kind of very kind of simple little intentions, specifics, you know, what's next. I don't believe in the sandwich technique that they used to teach 20 years ago. You know, tell them something good, tell them something bad, and then finish with something good, because it just waters down really what you want to say. I would tend to give positive feedback and negative feedback in separate conversations, just so they don't get mixed up.
What I've observed is that Cambodians don't want to exist as individuals that would stand out from the group, but rather they want to be a part of a group, and that's how they feel comfortable. Do you agree with that perception I have? If yes, how does it translate in the corporate culture?
Definitely would agree with what you notice and observing and experience. I think that's one of the things I love about Cambodia, is that community vibe, people going out and eating together. And one of the big things in leadership that we talk about is building trust. And trust, depending on who you read in the leadership space, a lot of them would say it's the key to healthy teams. Another great book by Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of Teams, the number one dysfunction he talks about is the absence of trust. Okay. And again, the cultural differences in business they build trust in Cambodia is actually quite different to the way we build trust in Australian business. So in Australia, it's very much connected to doing a job together, whereas Cambodian culture is very much about being together. So it's not about doing work together or getting something done together. It's actually just about being together, getting to know each other. It's much more social, connected, if you like. And a lot of successful companies in Cambodia that I've worked with, one of the reasons that they're successful is they build that social connection element into their culture and organisation. So they'll organise social activities. They'll have a social committee. They'll give space and time for people to have lunches or go out after work. It's very much connected to that social community engagement. For a foreigner, often we come to a country like Cambodia and we get invited into community, and if we reject that, it can impact the level of trust. I'll give you one example. I remember running some training for an organisation. It was a 3-day training, so I got to know the team quite well over the 3 days, and at the end of the third day, one of the people in that invited me to their 3-year-old's birthday party. Now that would never happen in Australia. Right? And I guess some trust had been built over 3 days and they wanted to go take that to the next level. Or this is how I build trust. Now, obviously, you can't say yes to everything, but understanding that those invitations to connect and engage with leaders and people at a more social context is actually about them wanting to build trust with you. One of the key things for leaders to learn is to learn to be vulnerable, and that helps build trust. I remember leaders in the room struggled with the idea of, as a leader, being vulnerable. What do you mean be vulnerable? I would never be vulnerable in front of my workers, in front of my subordinates, because they would think that I'm weak, that I'm not strong, and I go, yeah, but you're not going to build trust. So that's a cultural difference as well, because sometimes the title, the position, want to save face, what the expectation of what they think that means is that I won't be vulnerable, which being vulnerable really is just about being able to admit you make a mistake, or ask for help when you need it, or saying sorry when you're required to. I mean, those 3 simple things build trust, and because they are a leader being vulnerable. And for me, that kind of vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness.
Let's say I'm freshly arrived in Cambodia. It's my first expatriation. What mindset or tricks or behavior should I have to be able to adjust in Cambodian culture as quickly as and as best as I can?
I would say you've got to come with a certain sense of adaptability, so have an adaptive mindset. This is going to be different. I can't expect for things to be the same as they are from where I've come from to Cambodia. It's going to be different. I would also say find a local you can connect with, whether that's as in a mentor type relationship, depending on what your role is. Find someone who you can connect with that can actually help you unpack some of those differences. Be patient, learn as much as you can about the people and the culture. Try and come with less of a let me tell you what to do attitude, and more of a how can we collaborate and work together? What can I learn from you and what can you learn from me mentality.
Brett, we are slowly arriving at the end of this
so sad. We can talk all day, I'm sure.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you something I ask to all my guests, which is, what do you wish for the future of Cambodia?
So much. I want to see Cambodia be successful as a nation, as a people. I want to see them free from some of the things I believe that have held them back over the years, connected to their history and their past. I want to see them thriving. I want to see them being the ones offering the world their perspectives and their leadership and their insights and their way. And one of the things that I have loved seeing, as I said earlier, particularly over the last 3 to 5 years, is local people rising up into prominent positions of influence and leadership, to believe in themselves, to believe that their history doesn't define them, to believe that they have what it takes to be great. And being like a Western country is not the answer. Love your culture, love your history, learn from it, and be the best you can be here in this country and in your culture. Don't lose who you are in the journey of becoming successful.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you so much for your time and the masterclass you just gave me and all
Thanks
the
for having
listeners
me.
today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Cambodia Workwise until the end. This discussion was a real masterclass on cross-cultural communication. I want to thank Brett for all the knowledge and the insight that he has shared with us during this discussion. What do you choose to remember? My personal takeaway is a reminder to always question my behaviors and others' behaviors when evolving in an intercultural context. This is so important, and I hope you also have learned something from this discussion. See you next time for another episode of Cambodia Workwise.